All right, so as you can see, the chassis is built. Went together relatively easy. It wasn't anything major difficult with the assembly. It was very straightforward, but there were a few little things along the way that if you weren't too comfortable or used to building, you might be scratching your head going, hang on, is this right? Is this how it's meant to be? So I'm just going to go over the few little things that I found with the car. They were a bit of tricky or need to look out for when building. So now we're just going to go over them and stick around to the end of the video to check out the other bits and pieces I've got for this chassis to finish it off. All right, let's do it. Okay, so these two ball bearings that go into the steering rack, before you put the rest all together, just put them in, because I had to actually turn the part upside down and use like the corner of the table and actually push down the part because they were very tight. The rest of the bearings went in pretty easy, so just them two, just a note. And then over the page, we're going to start the steering blocks, and you're starting off here with the right one. And the part here is, this part is this bit, and you can tell the right ones from the left because just in there in the cavity you can see the letter R, so you know which one's which. And the same with these ones. It is on this side. Oh, there it is. There's the R there, so you can tell which is left and which is right. Alright, another thing that I found building this car is that the steering setup is quite stiff, and it all comes down to the hub carriers here. They're just really tight to go in. I've spent a couple of nights just basically rocking the steering back and forth trying to loosen it up, and it is looser than what it was. But what I'm going to do now is just take these back out, the hub, and just sand or file a little bit on either side of the plastic to make it nice and free, because there should be no binding at all in your steering. As I said, this is heaps better than what it was, but I want it better. So let's get into that. Alright, so taking the front hub off, all I'm going to do just sand it down a little bit on either end. I just want to be off the edge because the ball stud's still in there. It doesn't need much off, probably only about not even half a mil. So I'll get these right, and then we'll have a look at it once I've got them all shaved down. This one's now nice and loose. This one's disconnected as well, but yeah, as you can see, that's just not moving. So get this one done. Okay, as you can see, all nice and loose now. That's gonna, if you're having issues with your standard steering and you think it's a servo saver, check these first, because as I said, they were so tight. As you can see, the steering rack has no bind at all. That's free as, and now so are these. Okay, next part I want to talk about is fitting this rear plate. When I first put it on, it was quite difficult to get all the screws to line up for everything to click in, and then it was actually catching, there was just enough flashing on each side of the part, the two parts were catching and basically bowing the chassis in a bit. So if you're building one of these kits, just have a check. As you can see now, there is a gap through there, so now it actually fits on and doesn't catch. So it's just something to look out for if you're building this, to get ready to file a bit if yours has got the same amount of flashing as this did. Okay, so onto the diff. Just one little thing to notice, that in here where you put the pin, there's actually one side like this that has the little rise in it. The other side does go all the way down, so you can easily get that pin in, but it doesn't really show it that well on the instructions. But just take note that they are different. And the other thing, the fluid that goes in this, it is 500,000 weight, or CTC, whatever they call it nowadays. Yeah, it came out basically almost like Vaseline, but it sort of globbed on top. I've let it sit for about 10-15 minutes and it's run down all inside. So when you put it on, don't worry about trying to force it in. Just sit it on there, put it down, and it'll run in eventually. Okay, and just quickly on sealing the diff, when I put it together, it was actually easier to put the gasket onto the thin plate and line up all the notches so it seats on properly, and then because of the thickness of the diff fluid, you can basically turn this upside down and nothing's going to move or fall out, and pop it on like that. And when you're putting it down, just give each or one drive cup just a little bit of a wiggle, just make sure everything seats in neatly. And the next thing, these screws are fairly tight going in, and they're only using a 1.5mm hex driver there for the head, which is fairly small. So I just use a little tiny dab of grease just on the thread just to help them go in to prevent the head from stripping. So now, if you think I'm getting one of these, it's not just that box that you need. If you're getting the kit, you also need rear tyres, you also need front tyres, you will need a body shell, you'll need motor, electronics, battery and glue to put the tyres onto the rims. You will need special tyre glue, which is very, very strong super glue. Next video I'll be back, have the wheels and tyres on, might even have the body painted, and might even have the electronics in. So until next video, take care.